Have you ever felt that little nudge in your heart and just wondered, was that God? Or maybe you've asked the bigger question, does God even still speak to people today? Well, that's what we're going to dive into. Because what if the problem isn't a silent God, but actually how we've been taught to listen? You know, it's a feeling a lot of us have, right? This sense of spiritual quiet. Maybe you even feel a little alone. You pray, you try to listen, and nothing. It can be super frustrating, even make you want to give up. But what if that silence isn't really silence at all? Look, the bottom line is this. God is not silent, not even close. The story of him communicating with humanity is woven through all of history, right from the very beginning. So the challenge isn't about getting him to speak, it's about learning his language. It's about learning how to listen. And to really get how to listen today, we've got to take a step back. The idea of God talking to people isn't some new thing. It's been happening for thousands of years, creating this long, incredible history of divine conversation. And what's so cool is how many different ways he's done it. I mean, in the Garden of Eden, the scripture says Adam and Eve heard God walking with them. It was just normal. He spoke out loud to Abraham, used dreams to guide Joseph, and of course, famously called to Moses from a burning bush. Then he spoke through prophets, and finally, the most powerful communication of all, Jesus. The Word became flesh. Jesus is the message. Now, all this history is great, but it can actually lead to a huge misunderstanding. It's a misconception that might be the very reason we feel that silence we were talking about earlier. Let's call it the booming voice myth. We have this movie-like expectation, don't we? We're waiting for this thundering voice from the clouds, some huge earth-shaking announcement that we just can't miss. We want the burning bush, the parting of the sea. And when we don't get that big Hollywood production, we just assume he's not saying anything. And this brings us to a really important question. What if our expectation is the very thing causing the static? What if we've tuned our spiritual radios to the wrong frequency, waiting for this giant broadcast, when the message is actually being sent in a totally different way? And that, right there, brings us to the core idea we're unpacking today. The reality of how God usually communicates is way more subtle, way more personal. It requires a completely different kind of attention. It's all about learning to listen for the whisper. There's this amazing story about the prophet Elijah that just nails this point. He was hiding out, looking for God, and suddenly there's this mighty wind, then a powerful earthquake, and then a raging fire, all these incredible displays of power. But God wasn't in any of them. He was in what came next. And there it is, the key, a still, small voice. Some translations even say a gentle whisper. This is the reality, and it's so different from the myth, isn't it? The real communication wasn't in the big, noisy spectacle. It was in the quiet, gentle intimacy of a whisper. So the practical lesson here is pretty obvious when you think about it. You can't hear a whisper in a noisy room. To hear that still, small voice, we actually have to choose to lower the volume of the world around us, and maybe even more importantly, the noise inside our own heads. It takes focus, it takes being still. Okay, but let's be real for a second. If we're listening for a quiet nudge or a gentle whisper, how in the world do we know it's actually God, and not just our own thoughts, our feelings, or maybe just that bad slice of pizza we had for lunch? We need an anchor. We need an ultimate fact checker. And that anchor is Scripture. The Bible is God's primary established voice. And here's the rule of thumb. God will never contradict himself. So any feeling, any nudge, any whisper we think we hear has to be tested. Does it line up with the character of God that we see in his written word? Is it consistent with love, truth, and goodness? See, this whole idea is built on the belief that the Bible isn't just a collection of old stories. It's a form of divine communication itself. As it says in 2 Timothy, it's God-breathed. So when we spend time in it, we're not just reading words on a page, we're getting familiar with the very sound and tone of his voice. So it all boils down to a really simple, practical process. Just 3 steps. First, you notice that inner nudge or thought. Second, you take it to the ultimate fact checker, the Bible. And third, you check for alignment. Does this feeling reflect the God you know from Scripture? It's a simple but incredibly powerful filter. Now, this might all sound kind of abstract or hard to do, but trust me, there's a really simple way to think about it that makes it all click. It's all about recognizing a voice you already know. Think about it. You can pick out your best friend's voice in a super loud, crowded room, can't you? Not because their voice is the loudest, but because it's the most familiar. You've spent hours with them. You know their tone, their personality. Well, the same exact principle applies here. Learning to hear God's voice isn't some magic trick. It's a natural result of relationship. The more time you spend with Him, in His presence and in His Word, the clearer and more familiar that whisper becomes. And maybe the most encouraging part of this whole thing is knowing that this isn't all on you. God isn't playing some cosmic game of hide and seek. The truth is, His desire to connect with you, to guide you, and to speak to you is even greater than your desire to hear from Him. The door is always open. So we end up right back where we started, but with a completely new perspective, right? The problem isn't a silent God. The challenge, and really the invitation, is for us. When it's all said and done, the final question isn't, is He speaking? The real question is, are you quieting the noise long enough to listen for the whisper?